Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all about one of the most important aspects of research, the ability to identify a research gap. So whether you are a PhD student or a postgraduate student or academician or just someone interested in conducting a research, finding a research gap is essential to contribute something new to your field. So first of all, what is a research gap? A research gap refers to an area where there is lack of information or insufficient understanding within a particular field of study. It could mean that a certain topic has not been studied enough, there are inconsistencies or contradictions in the available literature, maybe a specific group, population, or context has been overlooked, or there are new methods or theories that have not been applied to an existing issue. Now, finding this gap is essential because it ensures that your research adds new knowledge to the academic community. And why is it important to find a research gap? It is important because it helps you to find the originality of your work. So, your research will stand out because it will address something that has not been sufficiently explored. It will also add or contribute to the knowledge in your field. So you are going to contribute new information to your field which could impact both theory and practice. And it will also help you to highlight the importance of your research to the funding bodies, supervisors, and the wider academic community. Now let's move on to the step-by-step guide on finding a research gap. So first of all, you must understand the broad research area. So before getting into identifying a research gap, it is very crucial to have a good understanding of the broad field. This means that you must familiarize yourself with the key concepts, terminologies, or existing trends in your area of interest. And the goal here is to build a solid foundation. And let me tell you, you can't find what's missing until you know what's already there. For example, if I want to do a study on chronic diseases and telemedicine, I'm interested in the use of telemedicine in healthcare. I will first of all start by understanding the basics of what is telemedicine, how does it help patients and doctors, in what medical fields it has been used, maybe chronic disease management or emergency consultations or mental health and so on and so forth. I will understand the general trends like its rapid rise during the COVID-19 pandemic and the broad shift towards digital healthcare. So through a broad understanding of the fields, I will now move on further to narrowing down my focus. So step number 2 is narrow down your focus after having a broad understanding to a specific subtopic, because this helps you avoid being overwhelmed by too much information but also gives your research more direction. And this step could be something like zooming in one area. So broad topics are too big to cover comprehensively. So it's better to pick a smaller focused area to explore deeply. So instead of studying the telemedicine as a whole, I will narrow it down to one specific aspect or one specific area where maybe telemedicine's impact on diabetes management in rural areas. So this could help me identify or avoid studying too many diseases at once and also bring clarity to my work by focusing on one aspect of telemedicine in a specific population. Next step that you would want to do after narrowing down your focus is conducting a comprehensive literature review. Now, literature review is where the real work begins. So you might want to read as many relevant studies as possible to understand what's already been researched and what hasn't. I know this is the most labor intensive step, but it is also the most important. So without knowing what's out there, you won't be able to identify the gaps. And here, search the databases, Google Scholar, PubMed, Scopus, and try to use filters where you narrow down your search results to the last 5 to 10 years so that you are updated with the latest research. And while doing this literature review, take notes and keep track of the main points of each study. Here you will also can make use of the AI tools like SciSpace, Elicit, Research Cake, um, and there are other various tools that can help you identify the research gaps. So here it is, like in my example, I will have go through a lot of literature. I will review whatever work has been published on telemedicine, and I will try to document the studies, and maybe through this I will find some gaps, maybe that the short-term outcomes have been explored, but the long out impacts have not been explored. So hereafter, I will try to also side by side organize the literature that I've reviewed into themes, because this will help me to visualize which areas are well studied and which aren't. And through this visualization, you can start to see patterns that will help you identify the research gaps. And I usually prefer creating a table, or you can go for a matrix to organize the studies that you have reviewed. So you can list out your themes like treatment adherence, clinical outcomes, patient satisfaction, and so on. So this will give you a bird's eye view of what's been studied and what hasn't. So in my literature review of telemedicine and chronic diseases, I might organize my literature under different headings, like maybe short-term outcomes that have been explored, what are the whether patient experiences have been explored, and if they have been, what are they? Have the healthcare provider experiences been explored, regarding what is the current research, depth of research on long-term health outcomes. And by organizing my literature search in this way, I might realize that most of the studies have focused on some specific aspects, for example, only the short-term outcomes, while the long-term impacts have been rarely explored. Now, along with this, I will also try to look for any inconsistencies or unexplored areas. So, once you will be reviewing the literature, you will feel and you will see that there can be inconsistencies in the results of previous studies. Maybe some unstudied population, or maybe some area that have been entirely unaddressed, some questions there that have not been addressed properly. So here, try to find those inconsistencies or disagreement between the studies, because that can be a signal that more research is needed to clarify the issue. Similarly, if there are areas that have been mentioned but not deeply studied, that's also a sign of a gap. So in the example of telemedicine and chronic disease, I might find some studies that claim telemedicine improves patient outcomes significantly, but others suggest that there's little impact. So this inconsistency could be an area worth exploring in more detail, especially if the study doesn't focus on long-term outcomes. And maybe you may also realize that rural communities in the developing countries have been understudied. So this could also be one research gap that I could have identified, and I will go on exploring that. Another important and gold mine for finding research gaps is consulting the limitations and future research sections of the paper, because most papers end with a discussion of the limitations and recommendations for future research. And here you will see that authors often point out areas that need further investigation, and which is where you can step in. So try to pay extra attention to these sections once you are doing your literature review, because they are essentially the authors which are directly pointing out gaps in the research. And maybe in the literature review, I can find, like I was doing on telemedicine and chronic diseases, I might find that literature, past literature has addressed that studies have tracked short-term adherence, and that has improved, but they did not go on tracking on long-term patient outcomes. So this is a clear signal that a gap exists in the understanding of the long-term impact of telemedicine in managing diabetes. Further on, I can also go on exploring methodological gaps. So in some cases, you might see that the topic have been studied, but there is a methodological gap. And this means that the methods which have been used in previous research might be outdated, insufficient, or maybe can be improved upon. So this presents another opportunity to address the gap using better or different methods. So you can think of new ways to study the same topic. Maybe you can go for qualitative methods, some new technology, or innovative statistical models that can help to provide new insights. So for example, if there are studies which have explored the telemedicine in chronic disease in diabetes through quantitative measures. I can go for using qualitative research, where I can interview patients and healthcare providers to understand their personal experiences, which can offer new insights into how telemedicine affects the doctor-patient relationship in rural settings. So this is one way of doing it. Maybe you can also go for identifying contextual gaps, and this occurs usually when in research too much focus has been given on one region or one demographic or one system, while others have been unexplored. So this step is particularly important if your interest lies in geographic or cultural comparisons. So you might want to think about populations or areas that have been overlooked in the previous researches, and this could involve age groups or genders or socioeconomic backgrounds or some particular countries. So this is where this is also one area of research gap that you can go on looking for. So for example, if there had been studies which have talked about telemedicine and diabetes management, but they have mostly focused on high income countries like US or Europe, there may be, and there are little research on rural areas and low income countries. So this geographical gap provides a clear opportunity for a meaningful research. And after the thorough literature review and finding some gap, you will have to propose a research question. So now that you've identified the gap, it's time to frame a research question, and the question should be clear, specific, and feasible, because it will drive the rest of your study. So ensure that the research question, it addresses the gap directly, and it is focused enough to be answerable yet broad enough to contribute to the field. So for example, in the telemedicine in chronic diseases, let's say I have identified a gap in understanding how telemedicine affects long-term outcomes for disease patients in rural low-income regions. My research question could be, what are the long-term clinical outcomes of telemedicine interventions for diabetes management in rural low-income regions, and how do these compare to the traditional healthcare methods? So this is just one example. You can obviously frame your research question depending upon whatever research area that you're exploring. And lastly, before fully committing to your research, you should validate it. So talk to experts in the field, present your ideas at conferences, or consult with your academic peers to ensure that your gap is significant and that your research will contribute to the academic community. And taking feedback from others is very crucial, because you have to ensure that your gap hasn't been already covered, and that it isn't too narrow or too broad to contribute effectively. So talking to healthcare professionals in rural areas or telemedicine experts or experts in the field can provide insights into whether your proposed study addresses an important question or not, or addresses an under-researched area or not. And they can also suggest refinements to your question that can make it even more impactful. Yeah, so by following these steps, you will be able to systematically identify a research gap that is not only relevant, but also original and valuable. And whether you are in medicine or engineering or social sciences or any other field, this process is essential for ensuring that your research contributes something new to your area of interest. So take your time with each step, as finding a gap can be rewarding and an eye-opening experience. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And in my next video, I'm going to talk about how to find a research gap using AI tools like ChatGPT and SciSpace and Elicit. So keep coming back and stay tuned. Thank you.